It's a long chapter. I'm back, part 2 of chapter 23. A sound in the garden down below caught my attention, and I dashed over to the open window. A figure was moving across the yard, the white of its nightshirt catching the moonlight. "It's him," I whispered, calling Aunt Kitty near. "That's Mr. Drysdale out there in the yard. Where is his robe, for decency's sake, and what's he doing?" "I'll get my slippers. You stay here and keep watch." Now lots of thoughts scattered around my head just then, spilling here and there like marbles from a bag. It was well past midnight. We'd come all the way to Mississippi to solve a mystery. The suspected hammerer himself was wandering around the primroses in the garden, and my aunt wanted me to stay indoors and miss it all. I raced to find my own footwear. "You cannot possibly wear those godforsaken boots," whispered Aunt Kitty as she felt under her bed for her satin slippers. "It is time that you get rid of those noisy clodhoppers. Do you have no other options?" Shouldn't Aunt Kitty know that she doesn't have any other shoes? I finished pulling on my boots and stood tall in the center of the room, tugging my own robe around me. I tried to make my eyes as fiery as hers tended to get. "My daddy gave me 2 things in this world, Aunt Kitty," I said testily. "His name and his boots. One I parted with happily, but the other will have to be pulled off my cold, dead body when my soul has departed from the heavenly by and by." His name and his boots. Oh, because remember, like, her name actually is Cornelia, right? But then goes by Nell. Okay. Aunt Kitty got to her feet with a but she spoke no more against my boots. She slipped into her own shoes, and off we sneaked along the creaky hallway and down the wide carpeted staircase. Aunt Kitty was in such a hurry we left the oil lamp and the poker behind. The unlit house was silent except for the ticking of a grandfather clock somewhere on the first floor. When we stepped onto the back porch, the whir of the cicadas made us both jump. We froze like a couple of stone statues for a moment, listening to Mr. Drysdale to catch us prowling. But the yard was quiet. Aunt Kitty glided down the steps without a sound and moved along the path like a ghostly apparition. Her long chestnut hair was undone from its knot and swung wildly at her shoulders. I recalled Mr. Pinkerton's request that I play the role of a ghost on this adventure. And I half wondered if that's what we were doing now, haunting the garden like we were. My aunt pulled me close as we passed along the jasmine, explaining in a hushed voice that what she thought was Mr. Drysdale's motivation for doing the killing. She said Detective Webster had become friends with him, and Mr. Drysdale talked endlessly about buying new land. "I suspect it all amounts to greed," she whispered. "If it was indeed Mr. Drysdale who killed the bank teller and stole the money, he has likely hidden it, and that 130,000 could be in this backyard, where he is visiting it right now." My eyes scanned the shrubbery ahead of us for any sign of him. "I wish you'd have brought a rope, Aunt Kitty," I complained softly. "What will we do once we catch him? I've been teaching myself to pinky whistle. I might be able to rouse someone to help us." Aunt Kitty ignored me and kept on walking. Or if Mr. Drysdale catches us following him out here, how will we explain ourselves? He ain't likely to believe we're stargazers." "We will not let ourselves get caught," Aunt Kitty declared. And because she couldn't let a moment pass without setting me straight, she added, "And the proper word is isn't, not ain't. Mind your grammar, even in times of distress." We inched on along the path, our arms entwined until we caught sight of the white nightshirt up ahead in a clearing. I heard the babble of what must have been a small stream, and in the faint moonlight I could see Mr. Drysdale standing right at the water's edge. I reached up for the nearest branch of the magnolia tree above us, and I quietly snapped it in 2. How did she do that quietly? Leaving a heavy blossom at the end to dangle like a fragrant chandelier. Okay, so a magnolia is a type of tree that's actually really big in the South. So she took a branch down, snapped it in 2, and she's got the flower blossom at the end. And she wants to dangle it, okay? It would be a marker for me and Aunt Kitty tomorrow to let us know where he was lurking. Oh. Okay, so she broke the tree branch, but then the way that it's hanging, somehow they can tell, so they'll know where to go back to in case it's a huge yard that they're in, plus it's dark and everything. Of course, hello. Good thinking now. As Mr. Drysdale turned around, I saw his face. It was as if he were wearing a mask. His eyes were emotionless and seemed not to register anything around him. Aunt Kitty and I ducked behind the nearest shrub to escape his notice, and he passed us by, oblivious to our presence. You know, if I was in the classroom, I would have, ducked down next to desks And also, when they were riding the horses, you know, if we were in the costume, I would have grabbed those like toy horses, you know, from the back of the room, and I would have rode those around the room too. So I'm a little bummed that, you know, I can't do those things. But hopefully you're enjoying being able to see some reactions today on my shelter in place look. All right, here we go. I'm almost done. Hours later, when the morning light splintered through the bedroom curtains, I could barely lift my head from the pillow. I was so tired by the night's adventures, my temples were pounding and my eyes felt puffy. And frankly, having grown accustomed to the silky cradle over at the hotel, I found it hard to sleep on plain old cotton sheets again. My body was dog-tired. But there was Aunt Kitty, pacing the wooden floors like a nervous cat and mumbling to herself. She was already dressed in her red plaid gown, and her hair was twisted back in its usual perfect bun. I could not work out what he was doing in the garden last night, she said to me, like I'd been part of her conversation all morning. He walked right past the cobwebs and branches as if he didn't see them. Her brows were pinched together like a couple of busy knitting needles. Let's see if I can do it like... And she kept on trying to make sense of the nighttime garden scene. Your response to nocturnal noises was normal. A gasp here, a jump of surprise there. But Mr. Drysdale did none of that. It was as if he were... sound asleep as he walked? I said with a yawn, trying to fill in the gaps. Aunt Kitty suddenly stopped her pacing and spun around to face me. Walking in his sleep, that's it. Excellent observation, Penelope, she said brightly. Then she pulled on her questionable feathered bonnet and headed for the door. He's a somnambulist. We've got to meet with Detective Webster and Mr. Pinkerton immediately. Get dressed as fast as you can and tell Mrs. Drysdale I'm recovered enough for a brief stroll into town. As the door clicked shut, I pushed the fireplace poker off the bed and pulled the lace pillow over my head with a groan. Because somnambulist was going to be in my next vocabulary lesson. I just knew it. Well, if you recall, the title of this chapter was, And I Rise to My Vocabulary Lessons, meaning she rose, like got up in the morning, with a vocabulary lesson. Now I'm going to show you the word. Well, maybe I'll just spell it. So this is the word. Let's see if I can do it. It's kind of blurry. So it's right here. It's S-O-M. Okay, that one there. So it's S-O-M-A-N. Oh my gosh. S-O-M-N-A-M-B-U-L-I-S-T. So your job is to figure out what that means, okay? So I'll repeat the part where it kind of gives a clue, and hopefully you can figure it out based on context clues. Okay, so she says, walking in his sleep, that's it. Excellent observation, Penelope. She pulled on. And then the next thing she says is, he's a somnambulist. He's a... Hopefully you figured it out. All right, you guys, I'll be back the next day for chapter 25. And I can tell right now by looking at it that chapter 25 is a letter to Gemma. Okay? All right, you guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Do we want it like this again? Let me know. Bye.